Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. My next guest is a writer, director, and actor who you have almost certainly seen in one of the many, many roles he has played in mainstream studio TV and films, from Law & Order to Steven Soderberg's The Laundromat. His story is interesting in part because he stopped drinking about 5 years before he actually discovered the world of 12-step meetings. But it was really in the rooms of recovery that he found a kind of stability that ultimately led to his successful Hollywood career. We've known each other for years, but have never really sat down to talk, so this light, rollicking conversation covers a lot of ground and feels like a good palate cleanser for the Thanksgiving feast. Won't you please welcome Larry Clarke.
I grew up in Bel Air, Maryland. I was born in Baltimore.
Right. Only child?
No. Irish Catholic family.
Right.
I was the last.
Of how many?
I'm the baby of 5.
5. That's not crazy for Irish Catholics.
It's not crazy.
But it's still a lot.
It's like that's like middle of the road.
And were there a lot of Irish Catholic families? Was it like
yes.
Was that the sort of vibe of the neighborhood?
Yeah, it was like Mayberry.
Right.
You know, we definitely.
And what'd your parents do?
My father worked for the Defense Department,
right.
Aberdeen Proving Ground, which is one of the number 1 employers in Maryland.
Huh.
So he actually was making weapons.
Right.
So I was raised on the defense budget, which I didn't really know at the time. But I did know. I used to go to Aberdeen and watch them shoot like, missiles. And
was he like an engineer or a designer?
He was.
Right.
Yeah, he was a ballistics engineer.
My grandfather was too. He grew up in Baltimore as well.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Maybe they knew each other.
He was born in 1896. So,
yeah, they probably didn't meet each other. He was doing the ballistics of cannonballs.
Basically, he was like a test pilot in World War I, and then went on to like
when they used to like drop like bombs like balloons all the up with camel.
Pretty much. It was old school. Like the picture of him, like his fighter pilot photo is just so crazy. He's like got this like leather helmet on.
He's like the Red Baron.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure my dad has that. I'll have to make sure that.
I don't think my father definitely did not meet him then.
Yeah,
No. They were a little more, it was Vietnam. I think it was around Vietnam. He was working on those bullets.
Right.
Missiles.
And was it like a drinky culture that you grew up in?
That I grew up in?
Yeah.
Oh, God, yes. Are you kidding me?
These are the questions I have to ask.
First of all, we live in a drinky culture now.
I guess, but I mean, LA, you and I were so like steeped in this like recovery world out here where
you ever go to Dodger Stadium?
I guess that's true.
Okay, that's the rest of the world.
Thanks.
No one really
Thanks
understands recovery. We live in a bubble. As a matter of fact, when you say you don't drink to normal people, they go, "You're not drinking."
No, it's true.
Okay. You're not. That's fine. That's fine. But you don't drink,
right?
We're
not even a glass of champagne.
Come on, wine. No. You can have some wine.
Beer.
I learned from my my grandmother told me this story that my grandfather evidently drank a lot.
Right.
There was alcoholism on both sides of my family.
Sure.
Serious drinkers.
Right.
So serious, in fact, that he worked for the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. He, at one point, would light the gas lamps.
Right. Oh my God. My great grandfather was a lamplighter.
We're connected again.
It's fucking weird. We might be cousins.
We might be.
He was Thomas Murray, who was an inventor.
Occupations.
Yeah, he was a lamplighter. He went on to become Thomas Edison's partner and made a lot of dough. But
that's a little bit more than mine. My grandfather was literally just a lamp. He just lit lamps. That's all he did, and he drank.
Mine drank too. His son, who was my grandmother's father, died of cirrhosis at 37.
Like they all did back then.
My dad once famously said, like, I don't think alcoholism runs in our family, Nick. Now, cirrhosis of the liver, that might run in our family.
That runs. You might not want to indulge. No, he evidently used to drink so badly that she almost left him, which she was a staunch Irish Catholic woman. And for her to say...
That's a big
And this
deal.
is back in 19... So he died, This is back in the 40s
Right.
or the 30s.
Right.
Right before my dad was born, so he was born in 1930. So anyway, at one point, she was like, and I think it was after the kids had already been raised. So I'm guessing this is in the 50s. She about had it. She
Right.
lived with it for a long time, and she says, if you continue to drink, because he used to drink Friday night after he got off of work until Sunday night.
Right.
That was the story. And he'd be blotto.
Right.
Couldn't
Lost
do anything.
weekends.
Couldn't
Nothing
do
but
anything.
lost weekends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she said, if you keep that up, I'm gone. So
Right.
he said, I would just drink beer then. Is that all right? That's kind of what Paul Newman said. Did you see that documentary on Paul Newman? He said the same thing to
really?
his wife.
Oh,
Yes.
my God. Hilarious.
Yeah. To Joanne, she goes, I'm out of here, Paul. You're drunk. And he goes, I'll just drink beer.
Right.
And she agreed. And my grandmother evidently agreed.
That's amazing.
But he drank beer all weekend. And back then, that was seen as teetotaling.
Right. Wow.
Beer and wine was...
Not a real man's drink.
it really wasn't.
Or even beyond that, like it's a health food drink.
Yeah, it's like a tonic. I think they looked at it as like...
Right.
And you think about it, in the early day of AA... Bill used to administer beer and stewed tomatoes to
alcoholics, right?
in his house.
Amazing.
Because
I didn't know that.
They were recovering from DTs.
Yeah.
So they didn't have drugs. They had stewed tomatoes and beer.
Which I imagine works.
It does, because if you take people off of hardcore alcoholics
Yeah.
right away,
They're in trouble.
they die.
Yeah.
Like they will go into I don't know, they'll have some kind of a fit.
Right.
But anyway, I digress.
No, it's interesting. I remember when I got in the first bit of serious trouble over booze. I was like 18. I was in boarding school, and my dad was very upset with me, and he was like, "Can't you just drink beer?"
Just take it easy.
He's just mystified by what I was doing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mystified a lot of people in my life in the same way. And that's, another reason why I have no problem saying my story in AA, because that's why we're drawn to it, because everyone's honest. But it's interesting is to say it to a community that doesn't share the same addictions or kind of look at us differently. It makes it harder to connect. I mean, if they were here in this room, I, as a performer, I'd have no problem talking to them.
Right.
But I could see how some people in AA are like, listen, no one's going to get this story, like.
I think there is that, and I mean, I definitely, there's some that are obvious. There's some stories that are obvious, whatever. Tommy Swerdlow was in here and whatever, he was in the hospital and he's bleeding out and he gets better from there. Like, I think people are like, oh yeah, he got to that point.
Yeah.
God,
he was bleeding internally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's, but there's trickier versions where it's just like, how people get well is a mystery, and why they don't get well is a mystery.
Well, what I have found, and now that I've been around for 28 years, with I've seen a lot in recovery.
Yeah, sure.
And it's what keeps you.
Right.
I mean, what keeps you on the beam, or what keeps you alive. I mean, because I find that the disease of alcoholism, now this probably won't make any sense to anybody, but I think what I suffer from is definitely an ism.
Yeah. Oh, for
now,
sure.
I chose alcohol, but
Right.
then it morphs into food and sex and relationships, and this thing just jumps all around.
Fucking tennis.
And fucking tennis. And it morphs. And any aspect of the disease, if you let it run your life, can fuck you up.
Totally.
And
totally.
to the point where, like, you have to watch out, like road rage. People don't understand about road rage. Well, that's an addiction as well. That's rage addiction. Yeah. Now, people will go, oh, that's a buzzword in recovery. Well, I think it's a very real thing. I think rageaholism is another type of addiction.
Sure.
And I have that as well. And if I indulge in that and pull my car over and, jump out and go, what, you honked at me, or you cut me off, or why, I'm an idiot, because anything could happen. And so I've only gotten out of the car a couple times living out here. Just a couple times.
I've never gotten out of the car.
But I've gotten pretty angry, man, and I've chased a couple people.
I've done dumb shit driving where I'm just like, oh wait, I'm gonna the only person who's really going to get hurt in this exercise is me. So
Yes.
just stop. That doesn't do anyone any good.
Yeah, and we're getting too old. Like I've always been too old to go and actually pull over and have a fight with anybody because I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I can, I'm an actor. I can look like I know how I'm going to fight, and I'm a big guy.
Right.
So people are like, "Oh, don't mess with the big guy." Yeah. But if I actually came across a guy, then he goes, "Let's go," who calls me on it, I'm going to be like, "Yikes, I'm out of here."
Just kidding. So did your parents, did your dad inherit
Inherit what?
the alcoholism? Like, was he a boozer?
It's interesting. Actually, so I think it skipped.
It skipped.
My mother had a lot of things going on with her. She didn't seem to have an addiction problem.
Right.
And my father did overdrink like everyone else did in the 70s.
Yeah.
He drove drunk many times with us in the car.
Sure.
But this is not a guy that, if I watched the scope of his life, he did not live to get high or escape himself.
Right. And so at what point did you first pick up a drink or your addiction
I remember
story?
sipping beers when I was little with him and liking the taste right away.
Right.
It's kind of, I have a typical, I think, American story.
Right.
Which is, and I always like to say this when I'm telling my story, it started off around 7th, 8th grade.
Right.
And all my buddies, we were playing football and tennis and having this active boyhood life that was full of so much energy. Then all of a sudden, one day, someone introduced beer to us, and it stopped. And I feel like we became men because all of a sudden we were in the pursuit of beers and getting high and women. And that started at 7th, 8th grade. Hormones kicked in, and then something happened where I know Jay Edwards invited me to his house. He was kind of like, I don't know, my Sherpa into drinking land. I've had a few of those kind of drug drinky Sherpas that always kind of
lead the way.
I'll show you the way. Kind of like in Pinocchio. What are the two guys that take Pinocchio into town?
I don't know.
Remember those two guys?
I don't remember, to tell you the truth.
Pinocchio becomes it wasn't it before he didn't become human. He was still wood.
Right.
And then they take him into the city and they show him the big city. Do you remember that part of the story?
Does he get laid?
Yeah. And in essence, he drinks and he gets laid. He has lipstick on him and stuff. And
really? It's funny. There's two Pinocchios coming out right now. I'll have to watch. I don't really remember.
Yeah, it's very risque. Right. Very risque. But anyway, my Sherpa Jay Edwards said, "Here, you got to sit here. I'm going to play the Beatles and drink a Michelob Light." And so I had 3 Michelob Lights, laid down on his sister's bed, and I was like, I heard the Beatles for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh my God, I finally get it. I get what everybody's talking about.
How cool.
But more importantly, I kind of felt relaxed for the first time.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thinking about my oppressive, fucked up mother who was always on my ass and my unhappy household.
Right.
A lot of screaming, a lot of tension.
Right.
And when I drank, all that went away.
Right.
So I liked to go after that. A lot of drinkers say they're always going after that first, that first buzz, that first connection to it. And but I liked it from day one. Yeah. And and then you notice that you start drinking differently than the rest of your friends. Yeah. I think I drank pretty well. We all drank every weekend all the way through high school. Right. So, and I was hiding hangovers, and we were saying, yes, we're going to go get our tents, and we're going to just,
go camping.
We're going to be Boy Scouts. Right. And really, we were just getting tons of beer and then doing all kinds of strange antics and drinking moonshine. And a couple of guys really got some serious alcohol poisoning. Right. And then we started driving drunk. The older guys would be, and I was, tearing all over town. And back in those days, everybody drank drunk in the 70s, late 70s.
Yeah, the cops would pull my parents over and be like, just get home safe.
Get home safe. Take the back roads.
You're just like...
And get a coffee, for God's sakes.
That's going to help.
And thank you, officer. I will take the back roads. They're like, wait a minute, there's 2 steering wheels.
No one was ever arrested for drunk driving. At least in my town,
Well, it was also in Maryland. I remember Bel Air Road, which was this... obviously a famous road, one of the first roads in America. Really, it's US 1. Right. Goes up, and these were old horse carriage lanes.
Right.
So So they weren't very wide roads,
Yeah.
right? And then there were trees all along. So
Yeah,
whenever
yeah.
you'd see these, I remember being a kid seeing these cars wrapped around trees.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
And these were metal cars.
Yeah, yeah, those were serious cars.
And if you had an accident, you're dead.
You're
So
dead.
everyone was just like, there were dead bodies on the road, like every Friday and Saturday night from people driving drunk on Bel Air Road. And I just remember seeing flares and everyone going, oh, God, those poor people, and no ambulances, just them lying there.
And so, were you acting in high school?
I did act, yeah.
Yeah. Were you and was that cool? Was that like a good thing, or?
Yeah, you were like, I was a singer.
Right.
So I was the lead in all the musicals.
Right.
So, the
Like
nuns.
what was the best? Oh, you were at a Catholic school?
I was a Catholic school.
And was it all boys?
No.
It was co-ed, right?
Yes.
And so, like, what were some of the roles that you loved? I'm just curious.
Oh, you're a musical fan?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I did
I
some
played
just
Billy
because.
Bigelow in Carousel.
Right.
I played Emile DeBeck in South Pacific. I played Perchik and Fiddler, and Blake Barton in Bells Are
Right.
Ringing. Those are my
And
first
and
four.
like, did you like? Was it? I didn't do any acting drama shit in high school. Was it? But I always like when I did, it was always like really like I loved the few things I did, and it was always like super romantic, like. Back in the wings, like
Sure.
the girls all looking great. Everyone's undressing
Girls.
backstage.
Yeah, that's why I did it.
It was really. I loved it.
I did it for the girls.
Yeah.
I mean, I left football,
Right.
and they were like, where are you going, Clarke? And I go, I got to audition for the musical. And they're like, oh, Clarke is a fairy. They
Right.
make fun of me. And I go like, screw you guys. I don't want to hang out in the mud,
Right.
going up and down the hill here, sweating with my
Right.
jockstrap.
Yeah, you guys all smell.
No, I can hang out with the pretty girls.
Yeah.
Okay? You guys have a problem with that? And they got that. They actually
Yeah.
did understand it. They were pretty understanding. But I gave up football.
Right.
And I actually, and talk about drinking, I kept drinking, of course.
Would you perform drunk?
No.
Never. Or not never, but not in high school.
No, I never really got into that. I tried, being stoned a couple of times. That
Right.
probably wasn't such a good idea.
Yeah, that's hard.
I was usually burned
Right.
if I tried doing any of that. Usually, I was fighting a hangover
Yeah.
when I performed.
Yeah.
So it was always trying to wake up.
Yeah.
So
And then did you go to college?
I went to college, Towson State University, hon.
Where is that? That's in
It's in Baltimore. Well,
Right.
it's actually just north of Baltimore. It's 15.
Balti, baby.
Baltimore. It's 15 minutes north of Baltimore, and it's just where everyone goes. If you're in Maryland, you go to University of Maryland, you go to Towson.
Right.
It's just the way things go.
And how was it?
It was a party school,
Right.
and I was a big fish in the theater department,
Right. Nice.
and was able to score very low grades, and because I wasn't trying that hard,
Right.
and I was partying again,
Right.
and my theater grades would balance out my low grades,
Right.
because I always got an A in theater.
Sure.
So that's why, anyway.
And then you kind of graduate from there with more or less without consequence?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I got thrown in jail.
Right.
When I was 18, I was drunk out of my mind at the University of Delaware, because
Right.
we started the great University of Delaware. College tours
Yeah.
with my buddies from high school. We say, listen, we didn't go away to these. We felt like we'd missed something. We
Right.
wanted to have a frat experience,
Right.
or an experience of being away from home, but we didn't have any money.
Right.
So we were going to visit all of our buddies all over the U.S. and drink with them. So
Right.
our first trip was to University of Delaware, and of course we did 5 shots before we got on the highway. And then we got there, and it was frat parties, and I was drunk within an hour and a half. I was out of my mind.
Totally.
And then someone flipped the bird to the cops,
Right.
and they chased us for the next couple hours.
Oh, God.
And then I was hiding in a girls' sorority, and the cops said, come this way. And then they got me for resisting arrest,
Right.
which I didn't do. But
Right.
this cop, for
I
whatever
mean,
reason,
outrunning the cops is kind of resisting arrest.
No, he said this guy said, he put me in the car. I started messing with his briefcase because I was drunk.
Yeah, yeah.
And that pissed him off. He goes,
Yeah.
that's resisting. I came out, and then he put the cuffs on me, and I did not like having cuffs put on
Yeah,
me.
I've been cuffed. It's not pleasant.
And I kind of sobered up pretty quickly, but I also got angry. So I said some horrible things, and I also started singing and just being kind of a bitter drunk.
Right.
And he did not like that. So they said that I hit him. I took
Oh,
off
wow.
and hit him in the face. So it was hitting a police officer.
Wow,
so
that's serious.
That is serious. That's a felony.
And what were the consequences for that? Did you have to go to
Trial. Yeah.
Oh my God! How horrible!
Isn't that horrible? I shamed my entire family.
How long
my
a
father
trial
was really
it?
pissed at me.
Like an hour or something?
It was interesting. They would not settle.
Right.
They were like, my lawyer was like, listen,
Right.
for whatever reason, I don't know how you treated these guys, but they won't settle. They want to actually throw you.
They want to put
they
you
wanna
in
put you in jail.
Oh my God!
They said, but just plead guilty, man. And I said, well, you know what?
Right.
I said, yeah, I was drunk that night. I said, I did not hit that police officer. And that's not going into the court record. And if it does, it's going to follow me the rest of my life. And I said, whatever you guys. So anyway, that's what I said on the stand.
Yeah.
Because they wanted me to plea out. And
Right.
I was like, listen, do have some integrity here.
Yeah.
But it was also the first time in my life that I realized this. And this is an important thing for your viewers to understand. That whenever you drink alcohol, even one beer,
Right.
you kind of give up your rights as a U.S. citizen. You're not quite seen as a trustworthy. They can always say, "Were you drinking?"
Yeah. You give up your credibility.
Yeah, and you're like, "Well, yeah, I had a beer." Oh, you had a beer.
Right.
Oh yeah, you like to drive with one beer. What was your, whatever that is. So
Unless you're Brett Kavanaugh.
unless you, well, yeah, 3 beers, whatever he had.
I like
4.
beer.
I like beer. But anyway, I was like, I did not like being handcuffed, and I did not like people looking at me as if I was crazy. I was
Right.
like, I drank 4 beers, but I don't hit police officers
Yeah.
just because I'm drunk.
Right.
And that's what I said on the stand.
Yeah.
And even the judge said, is it your word against this officer? And I was like, I said, I'm not telling you he's a liar. I said, I can only tell you my truth.
Right.
And I was a pretty good actor.
Right.
And the judge
Which
was
is
like,
valuable, yeah.
The judge was like, all right, case dismissed. Like, he let me off.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, there was
Yay.
another officer that came in and gave conflicting testimony.
Right.
Because he said, did you see Mr. Clarke hit?
Right.
And he goes, well, he kind of flailed around. And then my
Right.
lawyer, had a West Wing moment. He kind of stood up and said, Your Honor, may we dismiss, we should I move for dismissal. And he goes, granted. And the
Right.
courtroom exploded. Not
right,
really.
Right. Suddenly it's Miracle on 34th Street or whatever.
But I walked out to my car, and my father, it's the last time I ever saw him cry. He was crying.
He was so relieved.
No, he was pissed at me.
Boy, I'm really misreading everything.
No, he said, don't ever ask me for money again. Because he put up my bail.
Right.
$500.
Wow. God.
And he said, never ask me for money again. Like, don't ever. Like, basically, I disrespected the Clarke name.
Right.
And went to, jail, and I went to court, all this stuff. And, in retrospect, I was an 18-year-old kid and didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And it certainly wasn't the last time I fucked up.
Sure.
But my father probably should have understood that.
Yeah. I don't know. Parents, they think, sometimes they think tough love is the way to go, but.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So in my drinking story, basically ends from 18 to 24. That was a kind of a dark period, and I would kind of play around with stopping drinking.
Right. Even back then, wow.
Even back then, because I knew I had a problem.
Yeah.
Especially when I graduated from college, because everybody parties in college, but do they keep partying after college? Yes, the answer is yes for me. And they were all like, no, Larry, I got to go to work. And I was a theater actor. And,
right.
In theater, you can kind of party every night.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
And did you stay in Balti for theater?
I did. I did professional theater there for a couple of years. I was like a big wheel.
Nice.
Hanging out with New York actors and people that actually made TV and movies. So I did that, and then I was ready for the Big Apple. But I had this story of I was such a drunk and a loser that a casting director liked me in Baltimore, big casting director,
right?
Billy Hopkins.
Oh wow, that is a big casting director. Yeah, of course.
And I was just like this nowhere guy, and he saw me in Hamlet with Boyd Gaines in center stage, and he said, "Have that guy call me." And I'm such a drunk that it took me a year and a half to call them. I said, well, let me just wait to call him. I'm going to move to New York.
I'm
I
kept putting it off. To do it this morning.
I kept putting it off, and finally, a year and a half later, I go, hi, Billy Hopkins, Larry Clarke. And he goes, who?
Right.
Who is this? Why are you calling me? You saw me in Hamlet. He goes, oh, yeah, I did. Oh, Jesus. I forgot all about you.
And were you able to sort of...
He gave me an audition or something, but that was about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going nowhere fast.
So did you move to the Big Apple after Baltimore?
I did.
And were you still drinking at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I drank pretty heavily for the first couple of years, and that's when I experimented with stopping drinking.
In New York?
In New York. Well, New York showed me, I mean, that was the big time. That was way different than Baltimore.
Did you have any money to get to New York when you got to New York?
I was a waiter.
Right. Where'd you work?
All over the place.
Right.
But Inner Harbor, City Lights Restaurant was my...
That was your main jam?
Yep.
And where'd you live?
Where? In New York?
Yeah.
All over the place.
Right.
Whenever there was a open bed or a cheap rent, I was, on people's couches. I lived with my brother for like 6 months to the point where he was like, yeah, it'll be time for you to get a place,
And were you auditioning for theater stuff? No.
Really? I was going to the Equity Building and lining up.
Right.
But I didn't have an agent.
Right. And so you were basically spending your time boozing?
Boozing, having hangovers, and waiting in the Equity Building line. And doing horrible auditions, I think.
And what would get
calls.
you to stop? You just get demoralized and be like, I gotta fucking stop drinking?
Well, it's interesting. I've always... I feel like I had a white light experience well before I came into the rooms.
Right.
I basically had this... I knew I was emotionally, I was like losing it. And I was also drinking a little bit of alcohol and having these huge, weird mood swings. And
right.
I was angry and I was crying. I was overreacting. A lot of times it was women. They're breaking up with me, and I was always a wreck.
Right.
And I didn't know what was wrong with me. So I started, to see therapists, and I knew I had to stop drinking because, drinking wasn't doing anything positive in my life.
Right.
And if anything, in New York City, it can kill you in 2 seconds.
Totally.
Like you could just stumble off a curb and you're hit by, a cab, and you're dead. And I knew that. And I was pushing it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of famous for I'd get off of my job, and I'd start drinking at my work. And it was a story, and then I would take the train to the 7 train to Astoria, stop off at all the strip clubs, fall in love with strippers, of course.
Yeah.
And then I'd be taking Valiums while I was watching them strip.
Right.
And then around 3 o'clock, those places closed, and then I would be staggering around Astoria by myself, drunk.
Right.
A couple times I broke into some buildings. I don't know why.
Right.
It was just like...
Right, you're just sort of drunk.
I was exploring, and then I jumped off the 2nd story onto a gravel pit. I was just doing crazy shit like that.
Right. Did you hurt yourself?
I actually didn't. I don't know how I didn't. But then I'd get home around 5 or 6, and then I'd be like, what am I doing with my life? And crash, wake up, and do it all over again.
Yeah.
That was like a typical day for me.
Well, that doesn't sound very fun, actually.
No. And then I tried to stop drinking by drinking Harvey's Bristol Cream. Just
that'll cure you.
I figured once, and I'll have a couple of shots of that, and then I drank the whole bottle of Harvey's Bristol Cream. I think to this day it was my worst hangover.
Oh, that sounds horrible. I'd always say, because we'd have a party or something, and so we'd buy a lot of booze, and then I would drink the vodka, and I'd be like, well, when I'm done with the vodka, I'll stop drinking. And I'd be like, well, I'll drink the gin. And then I'd be like, when I finish the gin, I'll stop drinking. And then I'd be like, well, I like rum. I'd drink the rum, and be like, then I'll stop drinking. And then, then I would drink the tequila, and then I would just buy it all again.
Yeah, and you're like, I really missed the vodka. I mean, the tequila really made me miss the vodka.
Yeah, you'd think, God, well, what's a really great drink is just a tequila and soda. I mean, you could just justify anything.
Well, when I did finally get sober, I remember talking in a few rehabs, and I would basically tell my story, and I'd get these guys. I'll never forget these guys. That I try to make my story a little bit darker and harder, because they'd go, and this is an impression of a dude from the Bronx. All right, he'd go, wait a minute, man, you were just drinking beer and smoking pot, and you're here to talk to us? And I was like, yeah, but I drank a lot of beer and pot and made a little coke.
Right. I've got my bona fides.
They slipped me crack once. And he's like, oh man, get out of here. Like they didn't think my story was intense enough.
So so how did things progress? Do you stay in New York, or do you come to LA, or what?
I stayed in New York. I got sober in New York. Again, I stayed out of AA. I did not believe in AA.
Sure.
I didn't think I had a disease. I didn't think I didn't like the idea of going into a room and hanging out with other losers.
Totally.
I thought, I'll change myself. I'll get in really good shape.
Right.
Clean up. and then I'll be okay.
Right.
So that was my journey. And so it was one of these things. And then the sex stuff took off.
But so,
and then the food stuff took off.
But
I wasn't drinking, and I was smoking.
And how old are you at this point?
I'm 20. It's 24 to, I would say that period is 24 to 29.
And so you basically sort of white knuckle the alcohol at 24, and do you
by myself? Yeah.
And do you actually drink at all during that period?
I broke up with a girl, and I think I had 4 beers when I was 27.
And what was the incident that got you
threw up
to like say, "Hey, I'm fucking done with booze"? Was it jumping?
It was
in
a
the
white
gravel
light
pit,
experience, and I actually was with my brother, drunk. I was recovering from the hangover, and I said, "I gotta stop this drinking." My brother goes, "Let's experiment. We'll do a month." And so
together.
I did it. Together with my brother.
Because he was a drinker too, or
no, he
not
didn't.
Really?
But he would kind of drink with me,
right?
And,
right.
You know, he didn't have the same problem.
Yeah.
But he did do it with me, and then a month went by, and I went, "This feels like something I want to keep doing."
Right.
And he actually started drinking again.
Right.
And I kept it going.
Right. And it went on for 5 years.
Yeah, until I had a few beers when a girl broke up with me. And then I started smoking pot.
Right. Right.
Because really what, like, it's the balloon theory. You kind of like, you give it up over here and it pops up over there. And that was definitely me. So,
well, it's the like the hole in your soul that you're endlessly trying to fill, and like you fill it with alcohol, and that works for a while, and then that kind of stops working.
It is a hole in the soul.
You find something else to fill it with.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think it really stops in recovery either. I mean, you're kind of like, you can throw the 12 steps at it, and what do you get in return? What do you get? Well, for me, I'm alive.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually got a life.
Yeah.
So, because if I'm drinking, survival is definitely an issue.
Yeah.
Because I will fuck up.
Sure.
I will drink. I will drive. Something bad's going to happen.
People are like, "What's different about your sober life than your, your drinking life?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't go to the emergency room as much as I used to."
Exactly, emergency rooms. I mean, yeah. Listen, I consider it now a part of my journey of self-discovery, and it gave me a blueprint for life. I mean, that's really what AA did. And I'll tell you the exact story of how I came into AA. You want to hear that?
Yeah, sure.
So I kind of thought I was some kind of sobriety specialist.
Yeah.
Because I was not in AA.
Right.
But when I go to restaurants, go to restaurants. When I worked my friends knew me as the guy that didn't drink. And somehow I had these special powers or something.
Sure.
Like, Larry doesn't drink. And had these really interesting ideas on drinking. And I was on a spiritual journey.
Yeah.
And so if people had drinking problems, they would come to me.
Right.
And they'd be like, "Hey, dude, I'm drinking a lot." And I give them this advice. But, of course, I'm not in AA.
Right.
So my...
What was your advice? Like exercise a lot?
It was. Exercise, don't drink. I mean, that was some decent advice. But it's basically
which is helpful, definitely.
Like, why are you drinking? I mean, if you're drinking to hurt yourself, why are you doing it?
Right.
I can't moderate it, so I don't drink anymore.
Right.
Because I can't mess with it. I knew that.
Right.
And so that was kind of my story.
Right. Right.
But anyway, my friend Rick, he actually came clean with me. He goes, "Listen, I was lying to you. This because I said, 'Where'd you get that black eye?' And he's like lied. He said he ran into a door. And because I was sober, and because I was being honest with him, he said, 'You know what? I just lied to you. I'm going to tell you the truth. I was jumped last night trying to score heroin on East 4th Street.
Right.
I think I'm going to die tonight because I had a dream about this.'"
Right.
This is exactly what he said to me.
Yeah.
And he said, "And last night they did it, and it felt like my dream.
Right.
And I'm drunk. I'm going to do it again tonight." And I was like, whoa.
Right.
Let's talk. So we went back to his house, and I said, "Here's a sheet of paper. Write down, I'll wait, how many times you've almost died because of alcohol." And he filled like 2.5 sheets, single space.
Right.
And then he read them to me. And in retrospect, it was kind of like a mini fifth step.
Yeah,
right?
completely, yeah.
I did an immediate fifth step on him, not knowing what a fifth step was.
Wow, that's wild.
And after he finished reading, this took like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I said, "Rick," I said, "is that enough? Have you had enough?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think I have." He went away to rehab. He came back, and then he had all this AA terminology. As he starts talking to me, and he's like, I go, where'd you get those ideas from? And he goes, oh, you got to go to the rooms. I go, oh, well, I stopped drinking already. They won't let me come back in. I just smoke pot,
Right.
And I'm hanging out at whorehouses. And he goes, I think you're going to be welcome. So
you'll fit right in.
You'll fit right in. So I did, and I had a profound, I think, another white light experience, finally going to the rooms. And to me, the experience was, God, I'm finally around a bunch of people who are fuck-ups like me.
Yeah, I'm not alone.
And I'm so tired of telling my story and people looking at me perplexed like I got three eyes. And that didn't happen in AA.
Yeah.
People immediately accepted me.
Right.
And I felt at home. And it was really the beginning of like a simple kind of, like I said, a blueprint for living. And that's what 12-step and going every day and meeting the same people, it really changed my life. And, the least of which is I got an acting career out of it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you said you were in rehab. When did that happen?
Rehab, which time? What? I was talking in a rehab. That's what I was saying.
You weren't.
I did go to a rehab on this last slip. I did a.
Oh,
rehab.
you did?
I did it 12 years ago. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. When
that was a sex rehab.
Right. And so, but when so you're in the rooms and you found like a community that understands your madness, and like how does your life then kind of evolve? Do you come to LA? When do you come out here? I guess
I come out here in 2002.
And how?
I'd already been sober for, I don't know, I got sober in 93.
Right.
So, I don't know, 8-9 years sober.
So you start auditioning for real in New York.
I got a career almost right away.
Oh, really? How?
Like, I got on Law and Order.
How did that happen?
It was kind of like they say in the rooms, like
miracles happen.
Miracle. It like fell in my lap. I mean, it was a connect the dots kind of like, oh, get sober, get a career. Kind of like all of a sudden.
Did someone in recovery introduce you to somebody, or no? It was just kind of like
it was
this thing over here weirdly. Yeah,
it weirdly fell into my lap, and all of a sudden, I got on the right path. That's the thing about being fucked up and trying to find yourself and drinking every day and partying or whatever, however you're self-destructing. When you stop self-destructing, good things can just naturally come in because there's a vacuum, and good things will come flowing into your life when you start accepting them, or if you stop beating yourself up, or however you want to look at it.
Right.
I think that happened to me right away. And all of a sudden, I mean, I was catering, and then the next day I was on Law and Order. Like
Amazing.
I was watching Law and Order, and then all of a sudden I was on the set of Law and Order.
Right.
And that's an incredible journey right there. And it happened very quickly. Like I couldn't get fucking arrested.
Right.
And then I got sober. I did a play. Then all of a sudden, people are coming up to me going, "Here's an agent.
Right.
You're amazing." And all of a sudden, I was working, and I couldn't believe it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what brought you to LA? Just like the more work out here?
I got a lot of jobs, and I kind of like topped out. I was working with major playwrights. David Rabe is David Rabe. He wrote Streamers.
Yes, of course.
He wrote Hurly Burly.
Yeah.
I had the lead in a David Rabe play off Broadway. First we did it at the Long Wharf, then we brought it to New York, and like for an actor, that's kind of like the epitome of what everybody wants.
What you're working towards, this recognition.
I'm working with
you're doing a
playwrights.
classy play.
I'm playing the lead.
Right.
It's one of the, it's too bad though, it was not well received. And it really kind of dropped me. That was a tough blow.
Right.
Because, I gave my heart and soul. It took 2 years. And I think I left New York to come to LA kind of like, and the towers fell.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I had a bunch of friends that were starting to succeed. I was friends with Philip Seymour Hoffman. He directed me in a play. We actually got sober together.
Oh, wow.
Phil and I did.
Oh, interesting.
And he was like, "Yeah, Larry, you got to go to LA if you want to. You want to work in."
Oh, wait, Philip Seymour Hoffman just walked in.
Yeah, how you doing? I'll tell you my story. It didn't end well. Did not end well. But he was a great guy, and he actually inspired me. He inspired
I'm sure.
me. I mean,
he was inspiring to a lot of people. I mean, because he
Yeah.
was a very public face of recovery for a
Yeah, he
long
was,
time.
for a long
you
time.
know, and he was cool, and so you were like, oh wow, like the coolest actor in Hollywood is sober. Like, maybe I should think about that. You know, it was definitely a great sort of calling card for recovery.
yeah, you know, it's
And a testament to what you talk about. I mean, just how easy it is to find yourself back in the fucking gutter.
yes. I mean, I think in his case, he reached the mountaintop, and everyone told him that he was the greatest,
Yeah.
and he started to believe them.
Right.
And he stopped going to meetings.
Right.
He would come to our private meetings out here,
Sure.
and complain about how he had gone to meetings and he was being really paranoid about people like knowing his story. And we were like, dude, you got to get over yourself. Like, you think you're the most famous guy to get sober? Like, no one gives a shit about your story. Just go in there and tell your truth and go to meetings.
Yeah.
You know, because he was struggling.
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, he was struggling. He didn't know where to go.
And so,
So anyway, my story basically was then I got married. I had a big career, not a big career. I started working.
yeah.
And then, but at one point I got really, I mean, this is really trying how to deal with my brain has
Yeah.
been what I have struggled with.
Yeah, sure.
So I have this brain, whether it's sober or not, it works a certain way. There's a reason why I gravitate towards mood altering drugs.
Right.
Because I don't like the way my brain works.
Right. I want my mood altered.
Exactly. I have ADHD. All right.
Right.
And I also suffer from anxiety.
Sure.
Mostly because of that, the way my brain works.
Right.
So I have this kind of, anyway, that anxiety can kind of be very debilitating. And so I think my sober journey has been trying to figure out how to deal with that. So
Right.
I've done everything, the
Right.
whole gamut, including, and I had a slip on the ADHD drugs
Oh,
because I
right.
really liked the speed.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not speed. It was Focalin. It was a prescribed drug.
Sure.
But man, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And of course, it increased. Like, I all of a sudden started taking more
Right.
than I should
Because
have.
also doesn't your tolerance for it go up? Like, do you have to increase the dose over time or no? I'm just making that up.
Yeah. Well, no.
No.
Your tolerance. It's actually a very interesting drug. That's not supposed. It's actually not even supposed to be addictive. If
Right.
you talk to the psychiatrist, they're
Right.
like, "Well, that's not. You're not supposed to be addicted to this. This
Right.
isn't truly. You're having a response that's not."
Yeah, I'm an addict.
I was like,
get
I know.
addicted
Well,
to
I
anything.
think I'm having a response, but you're telling me that this isn't addictive, and I want to keep doing
Right.
more of it. And he goes, well, and he was right. If you did a lot of Focalin, you didn't have the same response as speed.
Right.
Actual speed, you get speedier and speedier and
Right.
speedier. Focalin doesn't do that. It kind of taps out,
Right.
and then you get this kind of weird feeling.
Right.
But anyway, I played with that for a while. But that also hooked me into, I had some watching too much porn, and
Right.
it affected my marriage. And finally I was like, I got to go deal with this. So I had
Right.
to stop it all, and I had to restart. And then I got on SSRIs to try to deal with,
What's SSRI? Serotonin.
yeah, serotonin uptake inhibitors.
Right.
So I tried all of those for about
Right.
10 years.
And did that work?
I think they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not on them anymore?
No, I
Right.
was on them for a while, and I did not like the side effects.
Right.
I was on Lexapro, which I really liked.
Right.
Of course, I started abusing that as well. Like, I
Right.
started, like, the psychiatrist going, "Why are you taking an extra Lexapro?" And I was like, I really just felt like, I was on set,
want it.
and I really needed a little, And he'd go, "That's not the way this drug works. It doesn't have that response in your brain." I go, "I know, but I'm an addict."
Yeah.
So I'm taking the extra Lexapro. He's like, all right. It doesn't do anything, but go ahead, take an extra Lexapro. They would always look at me funny because I was maxed out on Lexapro.
Right.
Like, you're only supposed to, like, a therapeutic dose is 20. I think it was up to 80.
Right.
And I was like, I think I need more, doc. He goes, I can't give you more than 80 milligrams a day.
Right.
And you're doing it twice a day, 40 in the morning, because I'm like telling him how to prescribe it to
Right.
me. Waking up, I'm having 40, and I'm having 40 around 5 o'clock when I get a little tired. He goes, okay, that's not what the drug
It doesn't
but
do that.
okay, you can do that. You're kind of crazy, Larry. And I'm like, thank you, doctor. But anyway, yeah.
And so how do you manage your moods now?
Tennis.
Tennis, yeah, that helps. Lots of exercise.
It's a constant struggle. Caffeine, anything I can do to kind of get up and get going. Lion's mane, mushrooms.
Right. And you go to meetings?
I do.
Right.
I do, yeah. Not, it's Zoom kind of fucked me up.
Yeah, I mean, I stopped going to meetings, but now I go to meetings every now and then. I mean, maybe once a week. I mean, I do this. This feels to me like a meeting, so that feels good. It's funny. A friend of mine invited me to a meeting. He threw like a little dinner at his house that was all recovered people, and then afterwards we read the big book, and we read a story from it. It was an early story. It was really weirdly written. It was called The Southern Gentleman or something, and it's early AA. So he gets sober, but then there are no meetings to go to. So he leaves Ohio, wherever it was that people went to get sober. He's in a sobriety hospital, and then he's out in the real world, and he's spinning out. And he has this plan. He's got a garage apartment outside of his house, and he put some books in there, and he's like, I'm going to go down into town, and I'm going to buy myself a couple handles of booze, and I'm just going to sit and read all weekend long and drink. And he's getting all excited about this. And he's but he has this moment where he's he knows it's not good for him. And he's he's been through recovery, and he has this idea of rigorous honesty. And so he decides he's going to tell his wife that this is his plan.
Oh boy.
But actually telling her the plan relieves him of all interest in it. And, I feel like that's to some degree how the program works, where people, they're always well, if you think you're going to, I always tell my sponsees, just fucking call me if you think you're going to drink. There's nothing I'm going to say in that call that's going to stop you. What's going to stop you is calling me.
Yeah.
And I think,
I think he also sounds like has an idealized act out once
he plays it out a little bit,
or he's got one, I call it one wet rock, stopping you from going over Niagara Falls. It's I
haven't heard that expression before.
Well, it's mine.
Right. It's good.
That's an original. I had a sponsee who just called me after he slipped, and I'm working with a couple of sponsees, and I have to, during this whole pandemic, they've actually helped me a great deal.
Sure.
But he's got some. This guy's had a few slips, and they're deadly slips.
Right.
And anyways, he's looking at court time and whatnot. So he picks up again, and he tells me, and I go, "What the hell?" I said, "You were drinking in the hotel lobby." I said, "How many drinks did you have?" Because I always do that with sponsees. I said, "Let's go to because you kind of have to do a a little bit of a 4-step on the slip,
right?
And so you try to explain to them when the slip started,
right?
This slip began probably 4 weeks ago,
right?
And so you kind of get them to go, it was never really about that moment,
right?
It's always been about something else,
yeah.
And this usually begins with you not being honest, you're hiding things, you're not going to meetings. You're not calling me anymore. Always begins that way because you don't hear from them for a while, and then all of a sudden you get a phone call and you go, "I drank."
Yep, I'm in rehab.
Yeah, I'm in rehab. I'm fucked. I'm in a cop car. I'm in the hospital. I'm dead.
Totally.
So anyway, he calls me. Anyway, he says to me, he goes, "Well, I after the 7th drink, I left. I went up to my room. I go, why'd you stop at 7? And he goes, because I thought about having to tell you." And I said to him, I go, wait, I'm the last wet rock that you grabbed before going over Niagara Falls.
Right.
I said, I don't want to be that rock.
Right.
I said, that's way too close, buddy.
Yeah.
Because you almost bought it again.
Yeah.
So don't depend on me.
Yeah.
I'm just a dude.
Yeah.
I can't help you.
Well, who's that guy got to depend on?
He's got a whole family.
Right.
He's what you're supposed to have is a whole sober network of brothers. You're
Right.
supposed to have a knee-jerk response to picking up because you've been going to meetings every day and you've constructed this life. It's all about habitual learning. That happens to drunks, especially when they're first getting sober, and they have the first taste of sobriety.
Right.
And that's a very powerful time in your life. And, it changed my life, and I've been sponsored, and I've sponsored many, many, many people since then. Because, now that you've been around for a while, I think the only way to stay sober is to help others. And,
Yeah. No, I mean, the whole idea of like, it's such a simple thing. It's so clever. Like, oh, you come in, you get sober, and then you help the other people, and helping the other people actually keeps you sober. And like, I don't do a lot of sponsorship, to be honest, because I'm not very good at it. I don't go to a lot of meetings, but like, I get squirrely and I go work at the soup kitchen down the street, which serves a similar purpose. Like,
oh yeah, which soup kitchen?
Hollywood Food Coalition, which works out of the Salvation Army. So we started like making sandwiches for them on the Sunday drop-off thing.
I did that for a while.
And
for about a year I did it.
I started like looking onto their website, and I was like, oh, I can actually just go there and chop vegetables. Like, that's really what I want to do. I just want to go and do some mindless service.
Yes.
And so I'll go do that. Or sometimes I'll bring my kids down and they don't chop vegetables. They just serve out the food. And everyone there is just like, I mean, all the people working there are super cool. But then also, like, obviously I live in the hood. So, it's like they're home, like the people that we're serving are my literal neighbors. Like, I'm there, and then I walk home and I walk through all the people that I've just given dinner to. So,
well, I mean, I find that is, as you stay in recovery longer, I mean, you find ways to do service.
Yeah,
and
sure.
You start to realize that service can be exactly that.
Like
helping anyone at any time.
Yeah.
If someone is in distress in a parking lot or
totally, and it's amazing how that feels. Like, I mean, this is not a cool story, but like, I was at the Bob Hope Health Center. I don't know if you go there for motion picture health. And
I stopped going there.
Well, you should. It's not the greatest healthcare service.
I didn't like the doctor. He called me fat when I was there. So
really?
Yeah, he goes, well, it's because you're obese. And I was like, I'm never coming back here. Because I was obese. And I was like, well, I don't like hearing that.
I was sitting there. I was waiting to like do my blood test. And there was this old lady, and she had a walker, and she's like struggling to like open the bathroom door with her walker, and the door is fucking heavy. And I watched her for a while before I was like, just go help her, Nick. And like, I got up and helped her, and she was so thankful.
Yeah.
It just made me feel like, it made me feel so good.
That's a
tiny.
small waiting room. I mean, that's a low bar.
No, I mean,
that's a low bar, Nick. I mean, it isn't like you were in a huge waiting room. I know how small that waiting room is. If somebody's struggling in that little lobby there, I'd be pretty cold not to help an old lady out with a stroller.
The funny thing is, I wasn't the only person sitting there watching her. So
everyone's
by the
staring
time
at
I
her.
got up and helped her, I was like, you
were like, well, I'll do it.
I'm like setting an example. I'm modeling the behavior I'd like to see in the world.
Listen, the longer that I've been sober, I've realized that we all wake up the same way, and we just have a different way of dealing with ourselves. So like, if you think about it, we're just sober. Like, you choose not to drink today, then you have to fill your life. And service was always a trick for me. It still is.
Yeah.
Like doing a service call or talking to my sponsees, it's just like, it's kind of a spiritual trick. It works no matter what.
Totally.
And you can be rather selfish about it.
Yeah.
It still works.
Yeah, totally.
So try to do service. And I have, pick up trash. If you throw a piece of trash and it misses the trash can, pick it up. And I always say to myself, I am responsible, under my breath.
Right.
When I do. And I try to be that guy. Just try to be a good guy. I mean, that's kind of what recovery does.
Right.
It makes you a good citizen, and go forth and do good works. I mean, how long can you sit in a meeting and talk about how you used to drink when it's
there comes a point you're just
this
like
long.
Yeah.
I don't really want to. It's even hard for me to talk about today as far as my journey. I've been on this journey. I feel like I've been on this journey my entire life.
Yeah. But it's interesting that it continues to be a struggle. I think that that's the thing that like I struggle
Yes.
with. I struggle with the idea that it's still a struggle. Like I was just thinking to myself, maybe life's just hard.
Yeah.
Like, and if you can accept that life is hard, then you can accept that actually you have to keep working at it. Like you have to keep,
Life is not
keep
easy, and it's full of
practicing
problem
being better
solving.
at it. You know,
I don't like showing up.
Well, and I think that that's kind of the the sobriety thing. You got to practice it like every day. I don't practice it every day, but I wish I did.
You practice this. You practice this podcast.
But no, but I mean, for sobriety, you like the people. There are people who like they get up, they pray every day, they meditate every day. Like I meditate a little bit here and there in the car.
Listen, don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. I am not one of those shamers because first of all, AA is a lifeboat, not a
Right.
houseboat.
Oh wow, I haven't heard that either.
Haven't heard that one?
No,
Yeah, if you're living in it, you're not supposed to be there.
right.
They told me that in the early days of
That's
AA.
good because I think a lot of people really do live there. It takes them a long time to.
Oh yeah, they like the AA houseboat.
Yeah.
And they feel safe there.
Yeah.
It's really a bridge back to life, and you
Right.
can't live on the bridge.
Right.
So you're given an opportunity to start life over, and that's you build a life. And if you think you've built it, keep building, keep going.
All right, man. On
That's-
that note, I think I'm gonna stop on that note.
I'm gonna stop
That's
on
the
that.
place to end.
Okay.
Thanks for listening. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/thedrunkalogs.